Welcome back. The ANC in Mpumalanga has rescinded its decision to lift the suspension of a former PEC member. He is facing allegations of rape. ANC spokesperson Dakota Legoete joins us now to tell us more. Mr. Legoete, thank you so much for your time. First of all, why is it the ANC at national level doing the interviews and not the parties in Mpumalanga leaders? Because they are the ones that rescinded the rape-accused PEC member. They said he must come back to work and then rescinded that decision.
No, thank you very much. I think at the national level, we are the custodian of all policy positions of the ANC, of all resolutions, as well as the Constitution. You will be aware that earlier on we spoke to your newsroom. They wanted our PEC in Mpumalanga. We're told that the leadership of Mpumalanga is still held up in a meeting with the COSAS in Mpumalanga. So we saw it fit that we must come in to come and explain ourselves as the African National Congress after our PEC in Mpumalanga took a decision in a special PEC meeting to rescind the decision they took earlier on to bring back the rape-accused member of the PEC back into the PEC.
All right.
So that's why we... Yes.
And I'm hoping that at some point they will come and account for that bizarre decision that they took, because just yesterday they were defending the decision to reinstate him. So speak to us then as the ANC at national level. Why has that decision been reversed? What has been your reaction?
Look, as the ANC at the national level, we welcome the reversal and the rescission of the decision by the PEC. Because you would know that as the African National Congress, one of our long-standing policy position is that of building a non-sexist society from the objectives we have set for ourselves in a national democratic revolution. Now, a non-sexist society means the fight against triple oppression of women in society, in the workplace, and at the family. And now you know, gender-based violence or domestic violence, as it is commonly known, it is something that happens within families, and it's something that cannot be promoted, in particular when it's done, or it happens, or it's alleged to have happened against minors or children. Now, as ANC, in our quest for non-sexist society, it's also to fight discrimination against people based on their sexual orientation, meaning LGBTQI, as well as discrimination of people based on their reproductive organs. Now, as the ANC, also as a governing party, we are a signatory to a number of United Nations conventions, including a convention on the Children's Charter. Now, in terms of the UN Children's Charter, Declaration number 16, it says, I quote, that in any dispute in society, the interest of the child comes first. And as a result, it means that as the ANC, we must at all times stand with the rights of children, against the abusers of children, whether it's an allegation, whether it involves an ANC member or PC member, RSC member or DC member. All of us as a governing party, we have to stand in support of our society. But besides that, also in terms of our way of life of Ubuntu, as an African National Congress that finds its foundation from the life of an African life, it says in Ubuntu values and philosophy that it takes a village to raise a child.
All right.
Now, it is a societal issue that the interest of the child, particularly a minor who's a victim of such a horrendous crime of rape, must be protected.
All right, Mr. Legoete, I have to come in there. The Mpumalanga ANC's reason was that the resolution of ANC leaders charged with corruption and other serious crimes, and the fact that they must step aside has not been implemented by the party. You, as national leaders, have effectively failed to implement that resolution, or at least advise how it should be implemented. That's why Ace Magashule is still in his position as Secretary General. That's why Bongani Bongo, Mike Mabuyakulu are still in their position. And I understand that there are legal implications for this resolution, but you failed to provide leadership here. You took weeks and weeks after announcing and affirming that resolution to come back and say this is the position, and that is that's what's causing confusion.
You would know that any decision of the ANC that we take, it must be in the spirit of the main constitution of the Republic. It must be in the spirit of the constitution of the African National Congress. Now, the step aside, as it is, we have not had regulations or guidelines that demonstrate how we can implement it as it is now. For instance, it's in some of the step aside, it's intransigent with some of the rules of order of number of municipalities, with some of the rules of order of the National Assembly, because it is said in some of the rules of order, you miss 3 meetings, you have self-expelled yourself as either as an MP, MPL, or either a councillor. So we have to come up with regulations that would not be intransigent to the regulations.
But how long does it take? How long does it take, Mr. Legoete? How long does it take to come up with those guidelines and regulations? It's been almost 2 months, if not more, since the NEC affirmed that conference resolution for those that are charged with corruption and other serious crimes to step aside from their positions. And you've been saying for almost 2 months now that you're still working on the guidelines. Surely it cannot take that long. If there are legal implications and you have to then dismiss and step away from that resolution, then you need to come out and say those members who are facing serious crimes, including corruption, they can stay on in their positions. How long is it going to take you to come up with these guidelines?
No, thank you very much. The last time we met as the NEC, it was in an ordinary meeting. It was in August. So we meet once in a quarter. So we're meeting in the first week of December as our last meeting of this last quarter. So we don't meet almost like every week or every fortnight. The NEC meet once in a quarter. So far, the top 6 as well as the National Working Committee has processed the guidelines and the regulations. They are going to be tabled in the next National Executive Committee meeting. Upon being tabled, the NEC will have an opportunity to have a bite, and once they are compatible with the laws, the legislation, the spirit of the Constitution, is then that they will be enforced. As it is the case now, with relation to gender-based violence and femicide, as the ANC, we've been clear in terms of our non-sexist policy. So the step aside, it's a new recent thing, but the policy on non-sexism, on the fight against gender-based violence, on the fight against women oppression, on the fight against discrimination of people based on their sexual orientation. It's something that we have long adopted with over 65 years, reinforced by a Morogoro conference in 1968 and all our national conferences until the last one, the 54th in Nazareth. So it's not something that is new. We have known in the ANC from time immemorial, once you embark on a sexual assault or there are allegations of such, you must face the quattro or you must step aside.
Is this not generally the culture of the ANC, what we see happening in Mpumalanga, in the ANC, Mr. Legoete? I mean, the former MEC who's accused of rape had ANC supporters when he appeared in court. He received a hero's welcome from ANC members when he was released on bail. And whether he did commit the crime or not, this kind of behavior is not new in the ANC. It speaks of the culture in this organization.
Look, the issue of gender-based violence and femicide, it's a societal problem. The ANC is a microcosm of the society. It's one of the elements of the society, and the ANC is a governing party, and that's why at all times in the African National Congress, we have to lead by example because we are, as a governing party, the leader of society.
But you haven't been leading by example.
As a governing party.
You haven't been leading by example.
Not all of us. No, not all of us. It's just some incidents, and I think we remain firm on our position. That's why in this case also we have made it a point that we appreciate and welcome the decision by our PEC in Mpumalanga to rescind their decision, because that was brilliant. There is no way that the ANC cannot stand with the victim, particularly in such allegations of rape, which involve minors, because I've made it clear on the Children's Charter and Declaration 16 that we are signatory to in terms of the UN conventions, that in any conflict in society, the interest of the child comes first. Whether it's a rape, whether it's a divorce, whether it's femicide, the interest of the child comes first. And as the ANC, we stand in this regard with the interest and the rights of the children, as well as women who face abuse and violence every day, Secondly, is that it is in our way of life as African people that it takes a village to raise a child.
Yeah.
By that we mean every village must ensure that it raises children well, it protects them, and nurture them to be better people.
Yeah, and Mr. Legoete, I hear you're mentioning the conventions that you are signatory to as the ANC, you're mentioning the sexist policy, but when I look at the statement that was released by the ANC in Mpumalanga, they don't mention any of that. In fact, their decision for rescinding that, for rescinding their previous decision to allow this former MEC back on the PEC, and I'm going to quote here: the special PEC meeting rescinded the decision of the ordinary PEC meeting on the matter and reaffirmed the decision of summarily suspending the affected member until his case is concluded by a competent court of law. So they seem to be basing it on the resolution that you are still failing to implement as the ANC. They're not basing it on the conventions that you as the ANC are signatory to and the responsibility you have to not only the victims but to be very sensitive when you deal with issues around children. So there seems to be a miscommunication there. You as the national ANC are mentioning those conventions and the responsibility you have to be careful when you're dealing with people who are accused of rape in the party, but they're mentioning the very same resolution that you're still failing to implement as the reason why they've rescinded that decision.
Look, it's good that they are mentioning a summary suspension, because a summary suspension, it's a suspension in line with Rule 25 of the ANC, which is a disciplinary code. But secondly, the reason why we are mentioning the conventions we are mentioning is that those conventions are signed on our behalf in the United Nations by the government. And now as the ANC, we are a governing party. We have the burden and the responsibility to provide leadership to society, that at all times we must respect what we have signed for as a nation on behalf of every citizen, and we must uphold and respect that, because as a governing party, a number of us are public office bearers, a number of us we are part of the leadership of institutions of the state.
All right.
Now it's important that we uphold and respect all conventions, the Constitution of the Republic, the rule of law. We must be ashamed when we do wrong things. We must feel sorry and regret when we do wrong things, even when allegations are made against us.
All right,
because
Mr. Legoete,
if we don't do that, we are going to turn into a banana republic.
All right, I really appreciate your time on eNCA this evening. ANC spokesperson Dakota Legoete. Still to